A very warm welcome to everyone who is joining us. We still have lots of colleagues who are on their way, joining us in this virtual world. So we will begin very, very shortly. Thank you very much to everyone who's taken the time out of their evening to join us today. We've got guests joining us from all around the UK and around the world as well, including in Norway and the UAE. I'm really pleased to say that we've got more than 350 guests joining us today. So we'll just give it a few more minutes for people to join us before we begin. Excellent. It looks like we are almost there. Fantastic. Still some more guests joining, so a very warm welcome to those of you who have just joined us. We're so pleased to see so many familiar names appearing on our screens, so thank you very much indeed for joining us. I think we're almost there. The pace of the pings is starting to slow. So I will take that as my cue to say that I'm Matt Price. I'm the Director of Research and Grants here at the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. And we're very fortunate to have a tremendous lineup of guests joining us this evening. So please do feel free to add your comments and your reflections to the chat function. That's open, and we'd like it to feel as much like a conversation as is possible in this sort of strange virtual world. We know that you're a curious group as well, so we've got the Q&A function. Please do start any discussions in the Q&A function. You can upvote any questions as we go through, and we'll make sure that we have time at the end of our webinar this evening so that we can respond to those questions and continue that discussion just at the end. If you do upvote a question, that'll mean it's more likely it's prioritized, and we'll be able to get through as many of those as is possible. I think we've still got a few more people joining us along the way. But I wonder if, without further ado, I could hand over to the person who's made this charity and this event possible, our brilliant founder, the Right Honourable Dame Andrea Leadsom.
Well, thanks, Matt. This is such an exciting day. And it's as all the names flashed up as people joined the call, it's like a roll call of just like the last 30 years of my life, because as many of you will know, I've been banging on about babies for a very long time, as have so many of you. And thank you so much to everybody who's joining us this evening. I'm so sorry we're not in Speaker's House, but that is going to happen. It will have to wait now until the new year, but this is a huge moment for the 1001 Critical Days Foundation, the date of our formal launch, and we've got lots of really interesting and amazing things to talk to you about this evening, to update you with, and we're really keen to hear your questions, comments and suggestions. But I will actually first of all pass over to the brilliant 1001 Critical Days Foundation team to just provide their own introductions. So Matt, once more back to you.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'm Matt, Director of Research and Grants here at the Foundation. If we can come to you next, Debbie.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Scott, and I am the Senior Communications Manager here at the Foundation.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Maria.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Maria Restrepo, and I'm the International Engagement Officer.
Thanks, Maria. Molly.
Hi, everyone. My name's Molly, and I am the Global Advocacy Coordinator here at the Foundation.
Thanks so much, Molly. Kat.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Grants Officer.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kat. And last but certainly not least, Ruby.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ruby, and I'm the Charity Administrator.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. So it is an absolute honour to welcome the very first speaker for our launch event tonight, the Speaker of the House of Commons, the Right Honourable Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Thank you to Lindsay.
Can I first of all say thank you, and thank you to Dame Andrea, because as she quite rightly said, it has been a lifetime of dedication for babies and families. I have witnessed and seen Andrea firsthand reminding everybody, pursuing us to absolutely do the right thing. I cannot speak more highly than what Andrea has done and her dedication to ensuring that the Critical Days Foundation exists. And I'm going to say welcome to all on the virtual launch of the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. Of course, I've got to say it's disappointing we could not gather in Speaker's House as planned due to the industrial action and the wider transport disruption. But what we have said is we will be returning. I want that date in the diary. I want it to happen. And I know it will happen because I won't get away with it at all. And quite rightly, Andrea, you keep pestering me and we're going to make it happen. Look, I'm really proud to be the first to sign the 1001 Critical Days Declaration. The campaign to enlist the support of 1001 parliamentarians around the world to back its mission in helping give every baby the best start in life. The care of young lives is a cause that transcends party politics. Giving every baby the best start is a duty for all parliamentarians, regardless of political parties. The three pillars of the foundations include funding frontline charities like Home Starts, Dad Matters, which supports the mental health of fathers, commissioning groundbreaking research, including Swansea University's study into the suicide rates among new dads. Such data is routinely collected in England. It's not routinely collected in England. It is only collected for mothers who take their own life. By contrast, the data is collected in Wales. The Foundation believes this must change. Another core objective of the charity is to advocate around the world for 1001 critical days, to encourage parliaments across the world to adopt this model. The ambitious mission of the new charity is for every baby right across the world to experience the best start in life. Thank you, Andrea, for founding this charity, for turning your passion into global action. Thank you to the distinguished audience of parliamentarians, charities, researchers from the parts that you have played. And I'd like to hand over to my old friend, Lord David Blunkett, patron of the foundation, say a few words about Sure Start programme he pioneered with the late Dame Tessa Joel to give children the best possible beginning and how foundation builds on that legacy. Children matters, babies matters, so I cannot thank you all enough for what you've done. I now hand over.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much indeed for the introduction to what is going to be an interesting outline of what's happened in the past, but more crucially, what's going to happen in the future. And I also congratulate Andrea for the initiative and for getting this off the ground so speedily and for being able to pull people together of all political persuasions and none, and to have a focus which I think will make a really big difference. We tend to change ministers almost monthly. It happened under your watch, Andrea. It appears to be happening under my party. And we now have a new early years minister. I happen to know that he's a go-getter, and I hope you'll be able to engage him very quickly with support for this incredible charity. Apart from the growth of my own boys, I first got really engaged and interested in this whole area way back in the 1990s when Sir Klaus Moser, the late Sir Klaus Moser, headed an independent commission that was really breaking new ground in saying just how critical these early years are, the 1001 that we're talking about tonight, the very early beginnings of nurturing a baby and working with the parents. Mr. Speaker mentioned the suicide rate of fathers, working with both mothers and fathers at a wonderful, but also an incredibly challenging moment in their lives. And all of us who have been parents know that's true. And then, of course, in conjunction with the late Tessa Jowell, we discussed before the 97 election, what can we do to bring alive this area in new ways, not just developing childcare, not just getting many more nurseries off the ground, but working in a focused way to actually give that support to parents, to families, and to draw in the wider community. And I'm very pleased, Andrea, that you're supporting Home Start, because those in Home Start who are very long in the tooth, like me, will remember that I was able to give them support, both at the Education and Employment Department and later, for all kinds of reasons, the Home Office. And I'm a great supporter of what they're doing as well. So thank you for working with them. Tessa and I developed the concept, which was carried forward in the early years of the 97 government for the local Sure Start programmes. I fear that the dilution of the programme in terms of creating children's centres lost some of the early salience. And I hope that your focus, Andrea, on these very early days, where it's needed most, in communities that can, by being supported, actually be a strength. People think of professionals coming in and doing things to people. We're in favour, all of us, I believe, I certainly am, in terms of doing things alongside and with people, so that we use the strength of even the most deprived community to be part of growing that child. And I know that Jess Mills, Tessa Jowell's daughter, is deeply committed to this as well, and I hope in future she'll be able to play a part. So this is a great opportunity. One of the upsides of doing this online rather than being in speakers' houses, that you've got very many more people engaged this evening than would have been possible even with the hospitality of Mr. Speaker. So it's a great occasion to get this launch off the ground, to ensure that it gets the publicity it deserves. I noticed that two of the staff are engaged in different ways with the outreach internationally and globally. So this is not just about what happens in Britain, but it's about learning from and contributing to what's happening across the world. Your ambition is unbounded, Andrea, and I can only wish you well. And now over to Eleanor Lang, I think, Matt.
Yes, thank you so much, Lord Blunkett. It's a pleasure to introduce the Right Honourable, the Baroness Lang of Elderslie, a long-term supporter of babies and supporting parents to support babies in the 1001 critical days, and also a member of our parliamentary advisory group. So a warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm afraid we can't hear you there. I think you might be muted. Let's give that a try. It wouldn't be an online meeting if there wasn't at least one muting malfunction. So it's good that it's happened now. No. It's not just me, is it? That can't hear. No. I wonder if you might try leaving and returning, just in case that syncs some sort of setting. And we will come back to you. Can you hear us, Eleanor? You can. Yeah, I'm very sorry that we can't hear you. If you'd be able to try leaving and returning, we'll continue with the next speaker and then come back to you if that's possible. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your perseverance. Tenacity is so important when working with babies and supporting parents. So this is just a good example of that skill in action for our guest speakers this evening. Next up, it's a real treat to welcome guests from Swansea University who have delivered the first piece of research that we've commissioned as the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. This is a world first study into how many dads die by suicide in the 1001 Critical Days. And it feels very moving to be talking about this today, which is World Suicide Prevention Day. So without further ado, let me get some slides for you and invite you to share the latest findings from your research.
So first, I'd like to say, it's a real privilege to be here at the launch of this initiative. I'm Professor Anne John. I'm a clinical professor of public health and psychiatry at Swansea. My expertise is in suicide prevention. So working with Kate, who will introduce herself next, has been a real privilege in bringing those two topics together. But my background was primary care and public health, so I really get those 1001 critical days. We've always focused, my research very much focuses on those early years and adolescence. Next slide, please. I am an epidemiologist. No one knew what an epidemiologist was before COVID, but I talk about data and I talk about rates and relationships. But in this area, we are talking about real lives lost. And it's important to remember that when we're talking about numbers. Suicide is potentially preventable, so there are real opportunities for intervention. And the impact, at the time for families and the wider community is huge, but also going into the future of children's trajectory. And that's the emotional impact, but also the economic impacts on families. And these can pass through generations. There is no routine reporting on paternal suicide in that 1001 critical days. We do have a sort of national audit for women and maternal suicide, but we don't have it for paternal suicide. And men as fathers are not really linked to their babies' records. So it's really hard to find them. So without some real change, it's hard to make that link. But also, there's no systematic recording that someone's become a father. So I think there's a real weakness there. So in Wales, we were able to do that work because of a thing called the SAIL Data Bank and also Sid Cymru, which looks at all suicide deaths in Wales since 2001 as part of the National Centre, which I lead. So we were pseudonymously, so we really protect people's identity, able to link birth records, death records, and households. And using various statistical rules, that's how we identified fathers. So we identified almost 300,000 fathers out of almost 500,000 babies born between 2001 and 2002 and 2021. We followed them up for that 1001 critical days. So we looked at data up to 2023 and we identified 107 fathers who had died by suicide. That's just over 5 a year. That's huge impacts on families. It's a big economic cost because these are, and the reason I talk about economic costs, that's that 7.2 million, is sometimes that's how we lead the change. Is showing that there aren't just those devastating personal costs, there are societal costs. However, the rates that we looked at involve those sorts of small numbers. So there's lots of uncertainty around those rates. And I think it's really important when we're interpreting them and talking about them to understand that. In the same time frame, 16 mothers died. And when I say time frame, I mean 2002 to 2021. Now that difference reflects suicide rates that we see in the community. We know that rates are higher in men. So I guess that highlights why we're not doing that sort of parent focus on suicide. And suicide is, you know, there's never a single reason, but it really shows you those touch points of where prevention for mental health, substance use, economic conditions are really important. Next slide, please. So what we found, and what those arrows are just showing how there's a lot of there's some uncertainty around these results. But what we found was, you know, in many ways, the suicide rate for fathers in that period is lower than for males in the same period who didn't become fathers or outside that critical period. Now that's expected. And the reason it's expected is because being in a relationship, fathering children, that denotes a certain sort of, denotes something that's protective. A good example of that is when we did work on university students, we found that the suicide rates in university students were much lower than for those who don't make it to university. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you've got all those problems, you're much less likely to make it to university. But that doesn't mean that universities aren't an important setting for suicide prevention. So what we see is, although fatherhood is protective, and there was a signal, so we see that slightly higher rate, 12 to 15, first-time fathers, the rate was slightly higher. So there's a signal that we should be focusing on first-time fathers. So that transition, and we see that across suicide prevention work, transition into new social, identity, economic times is when people can be vulnerable to suicide thoughts and behaviours. So I think what this study showed us is there's a critical window, and I'm often involved with campaigns where we're saying we're encouraging men to seek help. Often we don't respond to men in distress in the way we respond to women in distress. This is a time when men are in contact with services. So it's a really, I can't tell you the opportunity that lies there for resources, for specialist parent inclusive pathways. The other thing we found that isn't on this slide is that those from the more deprived areas, those living in the more deprived areas, fathers, were twice as likely to die by suicide than those in the least deprived areas. Now, we see that inequality across the board in almost everything I do, but it shows you areas that we should target. I'm going to hand over to Kate now.
Thank you, Anne. So this is, to our knowledge, the first national rate of paternal suicide in the first 1,001 critical days. And one of the reasons it's the first rate to be created is the sheer challenge in creating this rate and covering it when you don't have fathering linked to men's health records. And because of the quality of the SAIL data that Anne and the analytical team were able to investigate, we were able to come to uncover this rate. But that doesn't need to be the level of challenge that we have in monitoring and screening of fathers' mental health and suicides. So this is a global first, but it does not need to be the global last. And there are policy changes that will help both research and evidence-based practice. So I should have introduced myself there at the beginning, but I'm Kate Ellis-Davis and I chair the Interdisciplinary Perinatal Mental Health Group. And a lot of the policies and evidence-based practice and research that we've been pushing for really are highlighted the need for those with these rate information. So we need to have a link with fathering and men's health records so that we can have national monitoring, national screening programs, and national recording of changes in paternal mental health over time and any patterns of concern that we can investigate. We've looked at screening of paternal mental health, and this at the moment is patchwork in how it's delivered. And where we've seen great promise is where we have family systems approaches, where we think about the parents and the child within that family system. understanding that awareness is not sufficient, increasing public awareness is not an entirety goal if we don't increase training and awareness for healthcare professionals as well. And that's another big area that we need to be investigating. And next slide for that, in terms of the thinking about the research, which Anne and I are really excited to try and investigate more of what's going on here so that we can aid any guidance and support for preventing any and all of these deaths in fathers. So we need to investigate the health events and health service usage that led up to paternal self-harm and suicide in these fathers. We need to look at the family system and the impact of paternal suicide on children and to the family as a whole, and the involvement in health and social services and economic impacts, as well as educational, long-term and short-term developmental outcomes for these children in these families as well. Where we have existing pockets of screening and intervention, I think this work on rates will really support the expansion of that work, and the understanding that inclusion of fathers in perinatal mental health services has the potential, as Anne said, to target paternal mental health at this really key life transitional stage. Where we have groups where they're underrepresented in perinatal mental health research in general, that is a particular concern for us as well. So understanding the need to investigate groups that we need to have a focus on, including neurodivergent parents, parents by adoption or surrogacy, ethnic minority group parents, and gender and sexual minority group parents are all under that group that need further investigation. And our hope for this work is that those in the field can take this forward as well as ourselves. And we really want to see an expansion of consideration of fathers when we're talking about parental mental health, perinatal needs, and the outcomes for these families. And with that, we're going to hand back to you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Anne and Kate, for talking us through that really important and powerful research. I think what's really shone through is the need for us to harness that data in order to understand the needs of dads and support them better. And as Anne said, it's really important and sobering to remember that behind each of these numbers is a family that's grieving the loss of a dad and a baby that will never know who their dad was and what they were like. So really important for us to hold that in mind. We don't have the same data for England and Scotland and Northern Ireland, but if we were to extrapolate the data from Wales, it indicates that about 2 dads die every single week by suicide in the 1,001 critical days. And as Anne said, the economic arguments can often help us to persuade people that this is worth preventing rather than reacting to. So the total cost across the whole of the UK, if we extrapolate based on this Welsh data, would be about £122 million per year. So we absolutely believe that we should be preventing rather than reacting to these very distressed dads oftentimes. And it's so heartening to read the comments from professionals and practitioners who are wanting to make this change in their practice. So a hearty thank you to everyone there. I'm going to just take a moment to stop sharing my screen and come back to you, Baroness Lang, and we'll just see if we could hear from you again. No, I'm so sorry. It's never nice to be silenced, Baroness Lang. All I can say is that we really, really want to hear from you. Perhaps you could add a comment in the chat and we'll find another time to speak with you, I'm sure. But thank you so much for being so willing to speak with us. And I'm sorry that hasn't worked this evening, but you're pleased. And yeah, this is like a very good game of charades, but thank you very much indeed. So next, we will turn to our speaker who has for a really long time been a tireless advocate of fathers and how we can support babies by supporting dads. It is with great pleasure, Kieran, that I welcome you to this event. Let me make sure that you can see the slides in front of you as well. And I'll start by saying a huge thank you for all of your work and stewardship over this cause over recent years. I know it's been a passion project, and we're delighted that we'll be partnering with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. It's a real honour to be here, to be able to speak. I identify myself as a dad whenever I speak to anybody. When I meet them for the first time, it's the first thing that people know about me, and that has really filtered through the work that I've been doing since the days of Sure Start, when I used to manage local programmes back in sort of 99, 2000. I was involved as one of the first male parental advisory board members who had a baby in a Sure Start centre. So it's been a really long time that I've been involved, but it's a real honour to be here today. But I'm going to talk to you about Dad Matters. Dad Matters began as a Home Start host project in Tameside in Greater Manchester in 2017 in collaboration with the local early attachment service. Home Start Host is one of 177 Home Start charities locally supporting families with young children in homes and community settings across the UK. Dad Matters was born out of the need to better engage and support fathers in those first 1,001 days, because too often dads were overlooked in family and mental health services, and despite the huge influences on their child's development and their partner's well-being, dads felt isolated and couldn't reach or access services in the way that they needed to. So what started as a local project has now grown into a national movement powered by Home Start UK, with projects running in communities across the country. Looking ahead, we're hoping to build on this momentum with the support of the 1001 Critical Days Foundation to really expand the reach, deepen the impact, get into the data and the measuring of what we're doing and how it's working, and try and share that with more people. And critically, making sure that every baby's dad has access to the right support at the right time. Next slide, please, Matt. So this is a snapshot from our evaluation. You can find it on our website and through many of the press releases that were released today. What I'd like to show you is what's been achieved in the last 8 years or so that we've had Dad Matters. The first year was just me working in Tameside for Home Start Host alongside the Early Attachment Service with support from their clinical psychologists. Now we're present in 28 locations across the UK, engaging more than 40,000 dads in that 8-year period in the community and universal settings, including hospitals, family hubs, birth registrations, neonatal units, mother and baby units, lots and lots of different places. We've supported nearly 2,000 dads in one-to-one peer support, where our coordinators offer that support and that advice and expertise around attachment and bonding and relationships with babies as the core part of that peer support. And we've also done trained and engaged with professionals to help embed better processes and more father-friendly practice around 15,000 professionals. So these outcomes are really powerful. We're looking at 77% of dads report better understanding of the bond with their baby, and 84% of dads said their mental health and well-being had improved across their referral period. Some referrals might be 2 weeks, where dads need to check in, get some advice, get some information, be signposted somewhere, and sometimes it lasts for 12 months, where dads go through many different transitions of maybe baby loss, or maybe having another baby, or having twins, or having a partner that's unwell, and that flexibility to be able to support in the community is a really important factor. So in short, this slide tells a story of innovation, growth, impact. It shows that when dads are supported, families thrive. Dad matters because for every baby, their dad matters. And that's the reason that we're Dad Matters and not Dads Matter. So please spell it right if you can, that would be amazing. So Dad Matters is powered by Home Start. We are looking to support other Home Starts to deliver Dad Matters across the UK. And now I'm going to hand over to the real speaker, who I'm sure everybody will love to hear, Mike. Mike is currently a Dad Matters coordinator working within health inequalities. The list that the ladies shared before of those dads that are seldom seen in services, Mike works with a caseload of those dads and engages those communities. He also was a service user for us a few years ago now. His story is powerful. It's very emotional. Please look after yourself if you need to. Check in with yourself later on and reach out if you need some support. And over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike, and I would like to start by saying Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here tonight to share my family story. And sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional already because some of the facts are quite hard hitting.
That's okay, Mike. You take time.
Take all the time you need, Mike. Absolutely.
And I'm going to talk about how Dad Matters saved my life. I'm going to tell you about my life as a dad with autism and how traumatic events shaped my journey into fatherhood. So I had to imagine a time before my son Atlas was born. It actually feels like he's always been here. Before Atlas was born, life was simple. I'd go to work, I'd get ready, have my tea, and then head out and go and play snooker. And that was literally what I did. I would work, snooker, sleep. Then in 2020, the pandemic hit, and like everyone else, I was stuck inside. During the COVID-19 lockdown, on the 2nd of April, I actually found out I was going to be a dad. Now, with my autism, I don't usually have a filter, but in that moment, I had no words. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions, I was actually unable to attend any scans, but my fiancée Maz always returned home and told me about a service called Dad Matters, that she heard about them and saw all the posters around the hospital during her antenatal appointments. I didn't think much of it at the time. At the time, I was a youth worker. I worked with children and young people. I thought I'd be fine, but nothing could have prepared me for what was to come. On the 28th of November 2020, my son Atlas was born, healthy at £7.12. I remember getting the phone call at 5 in the morning, and I raced to the hospital, very excited, so excited to meet Atlas, who I now call and always will call my little legend. The day after, when we brought Atlas home, it was our first night as a family. It felt complete. We celebrated with a steak dinner, and it felt perfect until things suddenly changed. Atlas didn't seem quite right. Maz begun to worry, so we rang 111 for some advice. The reason we rang was due to Atlas breathing funny. By the time we got through to an operator, Atlas, we assumed, was asleep. As we know, one of the first questions they ask is, are they conscious and breathing? We said he was asleep. So they asked us to wake him. Fortunately, we couldn't. The operator spoke 8 words I'll never forget. I'm sorry, but you have to initiate CPR. In that moment, my world came crashing down, but I was able to give Atlas the initial life breaths and begun the chest compressions. And somehow, I got Atlas to breathe again. My front room filled with lights, and the whole experience felt out-of-bodied, as though I was a witness. Once I realised Atlas was breathing again, and the realisation that I saved my son hit me, the out-of-body experience had ended, and I cried. A few days later, the reality of trauma hit me, and I said to Maz, I need help. And that's when I reached out to Dad Matters through the website. Swiftly and quickly, Kieran had emailed me the next day, telling me I wasn't alone, and that I had been matched with a coordinator named Dan. Just that one reply, just knowing that I was normal, made such a difference. Unfortunately, over the days and weeks that followed, Atlas had more struggles with his breathing, more hospital visits, and a lot more worry. This led me to some very dark places mentally. Fortunately, I didn't face it on my own. I had my family and a team and a service called Dad Matters in my corner. Dan listened to me, he guided me, he empowered me and enabled me to be a dad. And if it wasn't for those lessons, and those opportunities to speak with Dan. The day that Atlas saved my life, the day he woke up crying, I would not be here, because I would not have understood the true power of attachment and bonding that saved my life, just as I saved Atlas's life. So I'd like to say to all of you here today that your support makes it possible. Without it, dads like me would potentially slip through the cracks. But because of you, I had someone to turn to. I would like to finally say, from the bottom of my heart, Atlas's, my fiancée Maz, and on behalf of all the dads out there, thank you.
Mike, thank you so much for sharing your story with us this evening. I feel like I could speak for a full day and I wouldn't have landed the important message of just how critical support is for dads in this time half as well as you have. So thank you so much for your bravery and for sharing your story with us this evening. It really does mean an awful lot. Thank you.
Thank you for your words.
I'll let you take a moment to read the comments, because everyone is also describing you as a legend, Mike. So you take a drink and just notice how much gratitude there is in the virtual room for you sharing your story with us this evening. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to hold the mic for just a few minutes longer, if that's okay, because many of you will be aware that we have been working at pace here at the 1001 Critical Days Foundation to work through our first ever open grant application process and award funding to charities who are working hard to give babies and their parents the very best start in life. So I want to just do a super quick canter through the charities that we are delighted to announce funding for this evening. Before I do that, I have to say a huge thank you to the 114 charities that submitted very high quality applications. The passion for this work across the sector was absolutely overwhelming, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life to work through which charities we give funding for. So a huge thank you to everyone who submitted an application. The first charity grants will go to the following 5 charities, and we're delighted to be committing £1 million in funding in total over the next 3 to 5 years. First of all, a project at Thrive at 5, which will see the expansion of an evidence-based video feedback intervention targeted at a more universal level. We've got OXPIP, who are scaling their saplings program, providing antenatal and postnatal support to families who have been identified as having additional social and emotional needs in terms of the parent-infant relationship. Literacy volunteers will be supporting speech and language development through their Learning to Love Books program. Much of that is targeted to very diverse and often deprived communities across Nottingham, delivered through family hubs where we know we can reduce stigma and improve accessibility of support. We know that up to 40% of domestic abuse begins antenatally, and for baby's sake is absolutely committed to breaking that cycle. So we're funding them to develop and roll out their trauma-informed intensive support program for parents in the 1001 Critical Days. It's a trauma-informed program that holds babies right at the center of that care. And last but not least, a partnership award between Home Start Edinburgh and Stepping Stones. Together, they're offering a holistic program of support, from peer support, practical support, and emotional support, so that we can ensure that parents get the well-being support that they need and that babies' outcomes thrive too. A very quick canter through the 5 absolutely brilliant charity project applications. And just to say that over the next 3 to 5 years, as a result of this funding, 1,800 babies will be supported across these organizations. So we are utterly delighted to be sharing that news with you today. Before we turn our attention to your questions, which I've been keeping an eye on, I can see some brilliant questions coming through. I would love to hand the mic back to Dame Andrea for her remarks on this launch of the 1001 Critical Days Foundation.
Thanks, Matt. And again, it's just the greatest pleasure to be here at our formal launch. And I have to say, wonderful to be online with Lindsay Hoyle, with David Blunkett, with Eleanor Lang, people that I've just worked for so many years on this early years passion that we share. Because let's be honest, babies are our future. Who else is our future? You know, if we get this period right, we can change our society for the better. And that is what this is all about. If we can give every baby the best start for life, we won't have most of the problems that we see in our society right now. So this matters so much. And I want to say a huge thank you, first of all, to all of the brilliant charities who applied for grants, and congratulations to those who got the awards. Your applications were truly inspirational, and it's wonderful to think of all of the brilliant work that is going to ensue from this. And there'll be plenty of opportunities to see what your teams on the ground are going to do to make a tangible difference to parents and their babies in future. Now, for those of you who know me, it won't come as a surprise that I've decided to spend the next bit of my life focused on babies and their families. It has always been my greatest passion. My mum was a midwife and helped to start one of the UK's first charities supporting parent-infant relationships. And after my first son, Freddie, who's now nearly 30, was born, I went through postnatal depression. And so it's always stayed with me how absolutely debilitating it is when you think you're a relatively sane, capable person, but postnatal depression is no respecter of anything. It just hits you like a ton of bricks. You don't know which way's up. You just cry. You feel incapable. You feel completely lost. Now, lucky me, I had a supportive family around me, but for so many people, if they don't have that, if they've got money worries, if they've got relationship worries, times are incredibly tough. And what we do know is that that impacts profoundly on their baby. So let's just look at this. We know that humans are unique in the animal kingdom in the extent of our underdevelopment at birth. If you think of a horse or an elephant, they're born, they get up and they walk off. But not so with a human being. A human being is born and it lies there and it can sleep, it can cry, it can look around. And that baby is at the top of the evolutionary tree. Now, horses and elephants don't have anything like the brain that we have, but we as human beings are born roughly 2 years premature. And what that means is that our experiences, what happens to us, the environment that we're in, and the experiences that we have right through from pregnancy to the age of 2 profoundly impact on the rest of our lifelong emotional and physical well-being. You know, our health as well as our mental health are profoundly impacted by our experiences in the 1001 critical days. So actually trying to do more to support families to give their babies the best start is what the foundation is all about. And we're going to focus on 3 things. First of all is funding frontline charities, so supporting charities who deliver help for new families in community type settings, who are actually delivering that help for babies. That's number 1. Number 2 is we're going to be commissioning groundbreaking research from right around the world. So this fabulous research from Wales into suicide by dads is just the beginning of some of the amazing research that we're going to be commissioning to try to demonstrate how we can better, as a society, deliver better outcomes for babies. And then the third thing we're going to be doing is global advocacy. So right around the world, from Norway to the UAE, from South Africa to Belgium, and of course the United Kingdom, we want to advocate for every baby to experience the best start for life. And we've already started, as Sir Lindsay said, our global declaration of 1001 parliamentarians that he was proud to be number 1, saying we believe every baby should experience the best start for life. So there is no doubt in my mind that if we can get this period of life right, there is nothing we can't achieve in our society and right around the world. And there is so much low-hanging fruit. There are so many inequalities that are utterly preventable. And there is so much education and support and just friendship and community that we can provide to new families. And for me, our North Star in the 1001 Critical Days Foundation is when we see all 193 countries around the world with a budget, an annual budget for the 1001 Critical Days, a bit like the 1944 Education Act in the UK that said all 6-year-olds should have an education until they're 14. That now, you would never imagine a world in which someone said, no, I'm sorry, your child's not getting an education. But the reality is, when you have a new baby, it is a postcode lottery. You may or may not get the kind of support and level of help that you need. And we need to change that, not just in the UK, but around the world. And so it's wonderful to be with so many people who are so passionate about this period of life. We all share that passion. I'm so grateful to Mike for his amazing story of his experience with Atlas. All our hearts go out to you, Mike. What a brave thing to talk about. And thank you, Kieran, for all you're doing with Dad Matters to try to improve the plight of dads. There is no doubt research is quite clear that if you have a secure, loving relationship with both your mum and your dad, you've won first prize in the story of life. That is as good as it gets. And that is our ambition, is to see that all of your family, whether it's your mum and dad, whether it's your extended family, actually get the support they need to give you, that vulnerable baby, the best start for life. So congratulations to all of us. I think we're off the ground, off and running. And I'm sorry again that we are not in Speaker's House physically, but we actually have got about double the number of people we could have squeezed into Speaker's House. And rest assured, we will be back there in January. So it's going to be the hot golden ticket. So make sure you book yourself in early. It is going to be a great party. At that point, we'll be able to talk about where we've got to so far, where we think collectively we all need to go next, and where we think the low-hanging fruit is. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to my brilliant team who are doing so much work so quickly. It's just a fabulous organisation to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. We've got a few minutes for questions, and some brilliant questions coming through that link quite closely, actually, Andrea, to some of the things that you just started to describe. Lots of curiosity around the Best Start family hubs and how the 1001 Critical Days Foundation can best support those Best Start family hubs. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts or reflections on that as a topic.
Yeah, I mean, the Best Start Family Hubs is a continuum. Lord Blunkett started off talking about Sure Starts back in 1997 when I first got involved with this period of life. Sure Starts morphed in the end into family hubs, and now with the new government into Best Start Family Hubs, which is all brilliant. What we need to see is that this becomes a cross-party policy, as we've tried to demonstrate this evening, is that this is not party political. We're all in this together. We all want to see the best start for every baby. Those Best Start family hubs, what parents told us during the research phase when I was the early years advisor to the government, what parents and carers told us is they wanted one, information. When you're having a baby, you need to know what support you need, and when you need it, where can you find it? Number two, they wanted universal support. They don't want to be stigmatized. No one wants to feel, oh, I'm a bad parent, you think you're judging me. And number three is they want a one-stop shop. They want to be in one place. They don't want to have to go all ends of town to try and find support. So the Best Start Family Hubs provide exactly that. It's a one-stop shop with everything from pregnancy all the way up to 19, actually, but certainly until the second birthday. It's a place for community, for friendship, for support and advice. And it's fantastic to see the new government not just embracing those Best Start Family Hubs, but also expanding them.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Andrea. And I guess one of the things that we've held in our mind through the charity grants and also through the research that we're commissioning is how can we best come alongside the Best Start Family Hubs, both in terms of commissioning projects that are embedded within family hubs, and all 5 of the projects that we have funded in the first round are fully embedded in family hubs, whether that is an officially branded family hub that received funding in the first wave of the Family Hubs and Start for Life programme, or whether that's a grassroots family hub that has looked at that guidance and created a model that's similar to it. So that's what we see in Edinburgh, for example, in the partnership between Stepping Stones and Home Start. So we'll do our bit by funding charities delivering frontline support for babies in these settings, and supporting governments and charities to demonstrate the impact of their work, because I think that's the other element of this. We know there's some brilliant work happening on the ground by charities and health services and local authority services, but how do we unlock the data and the insight from those services and add it all together so that it tells a really persuasive story?
Yeah, I'd like to just come back in there because that's absolutely right. There are so many brilliant, thriving charities delivering so much good work. Now, the one piece of advice I would give you is that in the Family Hub and Start for Life programme, which all of those who've received government funding are a part of, those local authorities are required to work with their local charities and voluntary organisations to create a proper strategy for the whole of the Best Start for Life that includes the charity sector and not just the public sector. So if you're a charity and you're delivering services in a particular area where there are family hubs, I do urge you to go in there, talk to the local authority and say, why aren't you inviting us in to come and deliver these services in the family hub, because you should be doing that. Now, we do believe there are about 950 family hubs already in England alone. So there's lots of scope to be actually sharing resources and sharing locations to provide a much better wraparound support for families.
Fabulous. Thank you, Andrea. There's some questions about the technical ways in which we can get the data about dads more updated. So I think that's picking up on the point that Kate and Anne made about how important that is. I do know of one local area in Suffolk that is routinely opening clinical records for dads antenatally and then closing them at around the 12-week mark if there's no longer a need for that record. So it is possible. It's hard to do, and it's taken them a long time and lots of local conversations, but it is absolutely possible to make these changes. And you can make them locality by locality. It doesn't have to be kind of across the board. Let me just bring in Kate, who I think wants to add to that.
Very briefly, fantastic points across the board, but in terms of the changes that we could see, they could look really small. So me and Matt have talked about extensively adding a question to the 12-week booking and appointment about paternal mental health, including questions around paternal mental health that are recorded nationally can be quite simple in its idea, hard to get into the bureaucracy of getting those things included on forms like that, but make such a powerful difference when we're thinking about what it tells dads that their mental health, that their paternal experience and their lives and the loss of those by suicide matter enough to be monitoring, to be tracking, to be intervening in. And the message that gives to healthcare professionals as well in thinking about a family systems approach.
Those words, dad matters, right? Mm. Thank you very much. Andrea, over to you for a final and fond farewell.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a brilliant launch event. I'm still just following all the comments and questions in the chat. Thank you. We'll try and reply to some of those separately. You know where to find us. We're all at 1001cd.com if you want to email any one of us. We're really keen to hear from you. This is a whole family here of people passionate about the 1001 critical days. And so we will be coming together in January or February, hopefully, in Speaker's House. We will have that glass of champagne and we will be doing lots of planning. We are going to be very, very ambitious. We are totally action oriented. There is no fine spray of goodwill going on here. This is all going to be about delivering the best start for every baby, ruthlessly focused on that with your help. If you're a donor, please contribute to our funds. If you're a charity, please work with us. And if you're a policymaker, please at the very least sign our declaration. We long to hear from all of you. Thank you so much for coming.